Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, more detail on Matt Ishbia's memo. We know he's going to be more involved. Apparently that means leading the way on the impending Kevin Durant trade. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Phoenix Suns. I'm Brendon, Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Monday. Welcome to a new week. Don't forget, Locked On Suns free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So click that follow or subscribe button. Do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer. Get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at Monarch Money for 50% off your first year. Joining me to break down Tom Izzo defending Jordan Ott, what might happen if the Suns have to keep Bradley Beal, and Matt Ishbia leading the way on Kevin Durant trade talks. As always, from the wonderful West Valley, my fellow Suns credentialed media member, how are we feeling? Ben Garcia.
What's up, man? I'm doing good. We have a head coach, and now we can finally get into the nitty-gritty of the offseason, what that means. Beal, book, Ishbia leading charges. So I'm excited, man. We can finally get into it. We know who's going to at least be the head honcho on the bench. I don't know. Maybe Matt Ishbia does show up and starts coaching the team. But for now, it's Ott.
Get him a quarter zip.
Yeah.
Some Nike Dunk lows. Those are kind of like coach shoes, I feel like. Yeah, maybe we can get that.
He might just sub himself in.
True. He has all summer to work on the jumper. But let's get to it. I think this came from a few different places, Ben, where it's more putting the pieces together, right? It's not as if we have some recording of Matt Ishbia on a call with another GM or anything, but if he's telling us, well, he's telling the internal staff, and then that leaked, I'm going to be playing a leading role here, and we know their next order of business is to trade Kevin Durant, then vis-a-vis, he's going to be the one talking Kevin Durant trades. And I want to play a clip from Brian Windhorst regarding the recent past when it comes to Ishbia and Durant. And this is from his Hoop Collective podcast on, I believe, Thursday afternoon or Friday this past week.
You know, they were going to trade Kevin Durant. They were very close to, or they were very much trying to trade Kevin Durant at the All-Star or at the trade deadline. And Durant said, no, I don't want to get traded. I don't want to do this. And that was Ishbia with that too.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think James Jones would have traded for Kevin Durant in that particular deal. Maybe he would traded for Durant, but not for that deal. I don't think James Jones would have done the Bradley Beal deal the way he did, and I don't think James Jones would have tried to trade Kevin Durant without involving him in the process.
And look,
I'll go even a step.
Okay, so as it starts to replay on me, that is the beginning of what he was saying there is looking backward. He said, I don't think James Jones would have done the trade to get Durant the way that it went down, to get Beal the way that it went down. And that was just to illustrate the point that we were all making on Friday, including you and I on this show, Ben, where we were like, what is he talking about that he's going to now take a step forward and be more involved, given that we already thought he was doing that, right? Then he went on to say more about the deadline, where it sounds like he was basically reporting that Ishbia had taken the lead on dumping Durant. Obviously, that's not what I mean. They would have gotten a lot back for him. But in February as well, when we know that KD basically found out about all of that from his Warriors pals and put the kibosh on it as soon as he figured it out. I think that's worth thinking through again here, because it tells us a little bit about Ishbia's mindset regarding the trade, which we have another clip on in a minute. But also, like, I came away from hearing Windhorst walk through that again, Ben, thinking, I still haven't gotten a good explanation for what happened at the deadline. And if Matt Ishbia was the guy so dead set on getting rid of KD, why didn't he just do it regardless of what Durant wanted?
Well, I think it shows right away that if there's any reason for us to believe Matt Ishbia has no idea what he's doing as a general manager, as a businessman, sure, that's different. But for him trying to go out and trade Kevin Durant, it shows me he knows nothing about player relations, which was a lot of the problem when it came to Devin Booker, Mike Budenholzer, Frank Vogel, and the whole team in the 2024 season. So, I mean, man, for me, it boils down to Ishbia can't understand, like, he has no idea what he's doing. The other thing to me is, like, he doesn't trust his general managers. And that was the first thing that I thought of when I saw that he was spearheading this. And that's the first thing we thought of as well was, well, when Brian Gregory got this job, we're like, how are other general managers feeling about this hire? And I go circle right back to that, Brendon, which is, how do other general managers feel that Matt Ishbia is running the show for the Phoenix Suns? Or at least spearheading a trade?
I don't know. I guess that's like that's the whole thing of this that's so strange is how different is it actually going to be? That's what's so head scratching about this announcement, this proclamation. And like, set aside if you're a fan or even you and I as media, the rolling of our eyes of it, you got to remember, he's saying this to his staff. That's so odd to do. Because if it's true that he was the guy in February pushing the buttons and working the phones a little bit to maybe get rid of KD and make that move at that time, and maybe that leads to getting Butler, or maybe that leads to getting some extra young assets or whatever it might be, they would have known that, right? Like, because it wasn't them on the phone. Of course they would know. So then to go around and then say, all right, guys, listen up. Things are going to be changing. I'm coming in. It's like, what? What is going on here? So I don't know how Booker feels. I don't know how KD feels. I don't know how James Jones would have felt or how Brian Gregory is going to feel now. But I don't know what to think will change because it feels like such a bizarre comment to make, period, right? So it's like, I don't know what to take of it because on face value, it just seems like more of the same. But I want to play this other clip that it's much shorter from Windhorst about what's coming next.
Is this. They're going to try to make a Durant trade probably between now and the draft. What it sounds to me like is that Matt Ishbia will be executing that trade. Now, maybe he was going to do it anyway, but that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. Lesson number 3.
Okay, that's it. That's it.
Oh, I'm just going to say, like, is Brian Gregory just okay with that? Is he just okay with getting hired for a job to be a yes man?
He kind of told us that's what he got the job for, right?
Well, I mean, I guess so, man. And I guess I would have to lean towards he's okay with it. But then why even hire a general manager? If you're Matt Ishbia, why don't you just make yourself the GM? Why hide behind it at all?
I don't know. That's a great question. I think you could easily make a case that he should do that he should do that exact thing. But yeah, I mean, I think it definitely begs a lot of questions that you were getting at, right? Where it's like, how do Kleiman and Durant feel? How does Booker feel? How do Mark Bartelstein and Bradley Beal feel about the owner being basically, I mean, this memo is basically telling us he's giving himself that title informally, right? Like that's kind of what's happening now. I don't know how those guys feel. I don't know how other GMs feel. Like we already, like you mentioned, I think you mentioned last week when we were first talking about this on Friday, you were like, we already heard reports around the deadline last year from Bill Simmons and others that Ishbia is not exactly everybody's favorite owner to deal with. And the Suns have been kind of on the outs around the league because people are just exhausted by them. And the idea that the Suns seem to expect people are going to do them favors to get out from the mess that they've made themselves. I feel like that's going to be put to the test in the ultimate way this summer. I don't expect it to go well when Ishbia calls up Pat Riley or that Heat front office trying to get Kel'el Ware back for Kevin Durant or something. I feel like people are going to be like, hey, kid, Wait your turn here. Why don't you slow your horses a little bit? Hold your horses. Like, why don't you learn the business a little bit before thinking that everybody's just going to bend down to you?
Well, we talk about Brian Gregory not having the experience to be the general manager of this team. You want to know who has less experience than Brian Gregory? Because at least Brian Gregory's like been around basketball for a really long time. Matt Ishbia. And I couldn't name you half of the owners in the NBA. And I think that's like the first step of being a good owner potentially is being out of the way, paying the checks, and just being a fan of the team. Ishbia, like the Stein report, reacting to Gerald Bourguet's article was like he wasn't already maneuvering everything that the Suns were doing behind the scenes. If it just sucks, man, because we had, I think if you're me or you, a couple of days of maybe they made the right hire with Jordan Ott. Maybe they're going to start stepping in the right direction. And then immediately something like this comes out legitimately 2 hours later. And you're like, oh no, is Jordan Ott also a yes man? And Matt Ishbia he'll just do everything Matt Ishbia says. And that's a problem, man. Because again, if there's anyone that has less experience than Brian Gregory, it's Matt Ishbia. And if you're a Suns fan, you have no reason to feel other thing but despair or negative feelings about what the Suns could get back.
My last thing on this, to be a little bit more constructive, because I know it can feel very doom and gloom for people, is the past trades, even in that first clip I played from Windhorst, all of those were buying, right? If you think of buyers and sellers on the trade market, getting Kevin Durant, getting Bradley Beal, even with the DeAndre Ayton trade, that was really about getting Grayson Allen and Yusuf Nurkic. They weren't just dumping Ayton. You could look at it that way in hindsight, of course, but that wasn't the intention of that trade. I guess the closest you could say to a trade where the Suns have had to sell was having to get rid of Nurkic this past season. I bring all that up to say I'm not positive what it will look like for Matt Ishbia to do a sale trade, which is kind of what I think a lot of Suns fans are probably hoping the KD deal will look like, where you're restocking your cabinet a little bit of picks and players. And if we look at February for any sort of prediction of where this might go, at that time, Ishbia was very clearly trying to stay afloat with the Kevin Durant trade. He wanted to get Butler back for KD, which I think was completely ridiculous, but that's what he was trying to do. To me, Ben, this says if Ishbia is indeed the leading voice in the talks around Durant this summer, we should not necessarily be so sold on something like we've been talking about with a lot of these packages on our show, where it's 2 picks, an interesting young player, and some salary. It might be guys who can help us keep winning much more than maybe the fans want it to be or you and I want it to be.
I would agree with you on that, man. And it leads me to believe that, again, the Spurs trade or something like that would make more sense of maybe they don't get any picks back. Maybe they're just trying to steal Vassell and Keldon Johnson, and then whatever the salary is after that, Barnes, and make the trade work that way. And maybe that's what makes Devin Booker okay with it. Is there going to be a team that's not blowing it up next year? They're going to be a team that stays afloat, maybe makes the playoffs, but gets ran out after the first round, and then prays a big fish wants to come to Phoenix again. This stinks of Jerry Jones, where his hand is in everything, but really doesn't have the qualifications to do anything. And so with that being said, man, I as soon as I heard it, it's all you can think of is what are they going to get back in a KD trade? And now it leads you to believe the comment section is going to be right, where it's they're getting back 1 pick, Jabari Smith.
Yeah, but it didn't have to be this way. That's the thing that I want to point out is I think a more savvy group, and that brings me back to, again, a little bit of a, take ownership of your position if you're going to be the lead guy. Yeah. Stick with your beliefs. If Ishbia wanted to trade KD in February, who cares what KD wanted? Do it.
Well, there is a little bit to that, right? You do have to kind of care what a star player wants. You want to have a good reputation. But why didn't you go to him?
Trying to trade him in the first place already disrespected him. So go through with your master plan if you're smarter than everybody in the room, right? All right, let's get to Tom Izzo defending Jordan Ott. What did the Michigan State coach himself have to say about all the Michigan State Suns jokes we've all been making? Next. First, today's show brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Well, we all do from time to time, because between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, all the stuff we all do these days, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, though. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. We all have some way of tracking this stuff, even if it's not the best or the smartest. We got a spreadsheet we made once upon a time, maybe this app for that and that other app for this thing, and a notepad we've jotted stuff down on, or some conversation we try to remember. Or take all control of all of your finances with Monarch Money. The all-in-one convenience is the point. It's that command center for everything related to your finances. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at Monarch Money to try it out for yourself and get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right, Ben, let's keep it rolling. I think we both said at various points last week, as we discussed Jordan Ott being hired and another Spartan connection entering the fray with the Phoenix Suns, we both were like, hey, well, I wonder what people related to that program and connected to that program actually have to say. And so Dwayne Rankin basically answered our call. He spoke with Tom Izzo, I should say, last week at AZ Central. And I have a few quotes we can talk through. The first one is just Ishbia's relationship with Izzo, Ben. He said, he and I talked a lot the last 2 years, even this past year. Owners learn, coaches learn, GMs learn. I will say this. He didn't buy the team as a toy like some of these owners do. He's just got to figure out what it takes to win, and I think he's figured out some of the things he's done, both positively and negatively. He's got to get some stability. He's got to figure out his roster, and I think you're going to see Matt more and more visible. Ben, I feel like Tom Izzo and I have a different idea of what the phrase "buy the team as a toy" means.
It's just so funny because it looks like Tom Izzo's dancing around the fact that Ishbia hasn't learned anything and still has to learn legitimately everything. When he said he's got to get some stability, he's got to figure out his roster, and I think you're going to see more and more of Matt. That last part is the worst part, that I'm going to see more and more in Matt. The roster is almost the main thing for this team. And then stability, I think you would lean towards is the front office, getting rid of James Jones and getting rid of
they're going to be more stable. That's probably true.
So this sounds like Izzo dancing around the fact of trying to be like, give friendly advice, but in the nicest way possible, of like, Matt's going to figure out. No one, like, what drives me insane is like, Matt says this all the time too, up in his press conference, like, no one will spend more money than me. No one cares more. Dude, we know you care. That is not the issue. That's like a quarter of the battle. The other part is putting people in charge that can actually do the job, because you clearly have no idea what you're doing. And when it comes to the money aspect, that's awesome, man. I just got done watching an interview where it was like every owner in the NBA is too scared to go past the second apron but Matt Ishbia. And what does that say about Matt Ishbia? That he's zigging when everyone else is zagging, and you probably shouldn't be doing that. So Izzo saying this, man, he's got a relationship with him. He's not trying to frustrate him. He wants to keep that relationship. What more is there to say than like they're buddies, and he's trying to give him some friendly advice? That's all I could take for it. What about you?
I agree the way that you framed it, of like a mentor trying to kind of take it easy on a protege type thing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to come out here and hammer the guy. I wouldn't have agreed to the interview with the local newspaper if I was just going to, take the knife to him. But it's not fully positive.
No.
So that tells me, you're talking about a dude in Tom. I keep saying Mike and Matt for Mr. Izzo. His name's Tom. He's not exactly patting him on the back. He's been around the block a few times, and he sounds like, oh, Matt'll figure it out. But here's the next one. Quote, he doesn't want to be an absentee owner. He's done a lot of things. He can take some crap because he got rid of a couple coaches, I guess. That could be true, could be false. I'm not there on a day-to-day basis to know. But I know this. Everybody got a chance, and what you do with that chance determines who you are. That's sort of talking about Gregory and Ott and the perception that they just got the jobs because of their connections. Again, like it feels like this is more of the same. He's not going fully positive, saying, I trust Matt with my whole heart, and I think it's going to be. And you got to remember the background of this, too. Not talking to you necessarily, Ben, but just for the everydayers listening, it's like this guy, Matt Ishbia, has been a prominent fixture in Michigan State everything, basically since he graduated. He employs at his mortgage company, either directly employs or has on the board several alumni. He publicly has talked about this connection. Izzo has come to games. We know about the Isaiah Thomas stuff. Like, this is somebody really close. You would almost expect it because of that to be more positive, right? Like, I love Matt. Matt is built to do this. I trust him to be a champion in this league, and he may not be everybody's cup of tea, but trust that it will work, and I believe he will get the job done. That's not what this is.
Well, Brendon, what if Tom Izzo said, yeah, he's done a few things that I don't really agree with. He's done, he's messed up this, and I don't know if I would have just employed that. I don't know. I can see why other people think it's him hiring his friends. He doesn't do that. And of course, like with you, I would expect him to just be like glowing A+ review throughout the entire process of Matt Ishbia being the Suns owner, because he has such a close relationship with Michigan State. Tom Izzo does have to teeter a line here and be friendly advice mentor, because they just played a game in East Lansing last year. You don't think that they don't want that business? You don't think they don't want more people from Michigan State to get looks from the Phoenix Suns? A booster, a massive booster to their program, and gets people over at United Wholesale Mortgage. Like, he's not. Izzo actually has things to lose in this interview. So when people like me wish they could get the actual authentic answer from Izzo, I'm not going to get that, because what he would say would hold a lot of weight if it was the other direction. So the fact that it's like 50-50, that worries me. That Izzo's also like, behind closed doors, I'm trying to talk to him, but this isn't the way to run an organization.
So the last one was, quote, this is about Ott. Mm-hmm. He's been in different places that are really going to help him. I hope and pray that he keeps some of what we did, because we had great success when he was here. But it's not a Michigan State Southwest from the standpoint of he didn't get the job because of me. He earned the job. He went through the process. That feels like fairly boilerplate, if we're being honest. I don't think it's the most ringing endorsement. He didn't get into the weeds of what makes Jordan Ott special, for instance. But look, they made the championship game in 2009, Ott's first season as a graduate video assistant. And I believe his last season, they were in the Final Four. I don't remember exactly what his last season was. I believe it was his last season they were in the Final Four. So they did have success. It's not as if he picked, the Suns hired a coach from like the down point of Spartan basketball. Those were like the Gary Harris teams, for anybody who's kind of trying to place it on the calendar or whatever. Draymond was there at that point in time when Ott was there too, right before. So it was a fairly good point along the thing. But again, it's like, wouldn't you have expected to hear, I've kept in touch with Jordan, I think his this and that. He talked about this year with Kenny Atkinson, how he liked that and the experience that it probably got. But I don't know, man. This was not very specific, any of what Izzo said.
It tells me he doesn't really know a ton about Jordan Ott. And honestly, do you expect the head coach to know a ton about the video coordinator? So I don't think it was necessarily a damning ringing. I bet you Jordan Ott wasn't even hired by Tom Izzo. I'm sure that was someone else on the staff that
But
had a
then
connection
doesn't
with
that
him.
make it that much stranger that he would benefit from the connection if it's almost just like freaking happenstance?
Maybe
I don't care about everybody who ever went to ASU. If I ever needed to hire somebody, that wouldn't matter to me at all. I understand I didn't win a national championship at my alma mater the same way that Izzo did, or that Ishbia did, but that's crazy to me. If Izzo doesn't care about Ott that much, that makes it almost worse.
I think he knows him. He's met him once or twice. He remembers how nice the guy was in his young age of being a head coach, and he's being a nice guy. Because you're right, it wasn't a ringing endorsement. It was really straight down the line of like, and I thought it was kind of strange that he was like, I hope and pray that he keeps some of the stuff that he did because we had great success when he was here. Almost saying like, it's stuff that I implemented while Ott was here, and I hope he takes the stuff that I implemented over to the Suns, not necessarily giving him the endorsement. So again, I can't read
because like in addition to him not knowing Ott maybe potentially or having hired him, there's also just the idea of like, well, he didn't really have any responsibility or say so.
No,
because he was
I don't know.
He's the dude who cut the film for the players to watch and like, oh, when you turned it over, that was an idiotic possession. Don't do that again. I
would just be curious to see the quotes that didn't get published, and hearing Tom Izzo maybe say to Dwayne Rankin, I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't see a lot of him, and I would almost rather that quote because then I'm like, oh, he just doesn't know about him, and that's okay because that's how it can be sometimes. But I'm with you, man. I don't think Izzo knew anything about him. I think it was more like he's just a video coordinator guy, and he was always respectful, showed up on time to meetings, and he knew his name, and that's as far as he could go with it.
If anything, I guess from Izzo's standpoint, he's probably kind of sitting there scratching his head like, why is everybody connecting this kid to me? You know what I mean? Like, this just has nothing to do with our stuff, I don't know, man. It's I feel like I'm coming up with more questions than answers the more we hear about all of this. Outside of Ott being, I still think, a good candidate. Like that, I haven't changed my mind on. Everything else, agree. More and more confused. Let's get to a big question looming over the Suns this summer. What if they can't get off of Bradley Beal as easily as they would like to? Next. First, today's show brought to you by Dash Pass from DoorDash. NBA fans, you know what time it is. It's finals time, which means big performances and even bigger rewards. DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass members throughout all of the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swoosh, You Score. Anytime a player drops 50-plus in a playoff game, Dash Pass members score a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the very next day. Just place an order of $20 or more, use the code WINGSTOP50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer valid noon to midnight the day after the game. Terms apply. Look, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just put up 38 in Game 1. I'm not sure anybody's had a 50-piece in a finals game since Giannis did it to our Phoenix Suns, unfortunately. But if anybody's going to do it, the amount of shots that Shai chucks, it feels like he's the guy since Giannis who actually could get the job done. So here's the play. Sign up for Dash Pass, unlock this and more exclusive deals, and when any player scores 50-plus in a playoff game, Dash Pass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the next day with an order of $20 or more and code WINGSTOP50. That's Dash Pass, your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms apply. All right, Ben, let's close it out. So we've spun our wheels on Bradley Beal a bunch here, and I think our last conversation, probably right before the coach search really heated up, was coming to terms with the fact that it might not be so easy to get out from under this, even with the way we know it's technically possible, which would be, hey, Brad, go get a mid-level deal or better. We'll give you permission to go, I guess, negotiate with other teams quietly and pretend like that's not happening and get some kind of indication that you're going to be able to get that type of contract. Once you do, we'll buy you out for that much, for your contract minus that much money. It's legal for us that way. Mm-hmm. We get you off our books, kinda. At least, like, we cut your salary into a third of what it should be over 5 years instead of 50 plus the next 2. And you get to go play a real role You won't have all the expectations of a max contract, and we can just rid ourselves of this era and whatever. And we were like, okay, that's cool. That's an easy story to tell. Is that really possible? And I think you and I were both like, yeah, maybe not, because that's a lot of things that have to go right.
I just don't get it, man. I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off. I just want to – Gambo's been the one spearheading a lot of this reporting of like, he's not going to be here next year. He's not going to be here next year. He's not going to be here next year. I'm just trying to find the understanding if you're not going to be a finals team next year or a team that keeps KD and I don't know, man, tries to go back into the Jimmy Butler bucket, which is not really possible either. I just don't get cutting the guy. Like, why don't you, in a season where you're probably not going to be super competitive or at least a finals or even Western Conference semifinals team, why not just let him run it back on the team right now this season, try to see if he can become to any semblance of Washington Wizards Bradley Beal and see if you can get off this contract next year. And if he's awful, just cut him at the deadline like everyone else does. Come to an agreement then and cut him.
Well, but probably next offseason would be more likely.
Whatever,
but yeah,
I just don't get it. Unless Booker just hates him.
Maybe. Yeah. So there's like two things going on, right? One of them is what you just said, where everybody is in agreement that they're going to try to get rid of him, buy him out for around $80 million, which is the thing I just laid out. But then almost every single other report is like, yeah, but that's easier said than done. Like, so Gambo had, and Mark Stein both had this, where coaches who were interviewing for the job that obviously just went to Jordan Ott were asked, what would you do if Beal was still around? How would you fit him in? What would your approach be? I'm sure a lot of the questions were also just personality-wise, like not Beal's personality, but just person to person. How do you manage if he does have to maybe be a bench player like we saw last season, or if he kind of knows he's playing out a season and then he's going to be bought out anyway? How do you get him motivated? All these sorts of things, just as much as how do you actually unlock him, quote unquote, on the court. And so that would indicate even the Suns know it's not that likely. And we're already all beyond the idea that he's going to get traded. Like that feels just stupid to even talk about at this point. So how would you approach it if you were Jordan Ott? And let's just say they obviously don't trade him. They can't make it all happen with all that stuff in order to buy him out for a level that's legal. And he gets another contract big enough to make that happen. And he's here. What would you do to make sure it doesn't go the way it has with now two coaches in a row? He was probably the guy who had the worst relationship with Vogel and with Bud, I guess outside of Nurk.
I mean, if I was Jordan Ott, like, of course, I'd have a real heart-to-heart to Bradley Beal, like, right away and find out if he wants to be here. Because if Beal doesn't want to be here, which I don't think is necessarily true, then get him out of here. Like, if he doesn't want to be here, then maybe it's just like, okay, man, like, let's just send you home like we did with Jay Crowder, and we'll figure it out when it comes a different day. But I just don't get the idea of, like, immediately just trying to get rid of him. Like, speak with him, figure it out. If he wants to be here, awesome. And then what I would do is, man, I won't sway off this opinion that I think Bradley Beal is still a good basketball player. I think the fit was just so bad last year where there was too many mouths to feed and it just could never get figured out. I think there's a world where Bradley Beal is this Suns team's point guard next year. He's athletic. He still is a playmaker, in my opinion. I still think he's got that quick first step ability to get to the basket. Again, we're not talking about being an actual finals contender. We'll see how it works with just him and Booker. But it also has to be where Dunn, I'm just throwing out names, Jabari Smith, and whatever, someone different at center. Because if your backcourt's going to be Beal and Booker, defensively you're going to be abysmal. You got to do your best to surround both those guys with a lot of defensive players and then let those dudes focus on getting buckets. Because I think that there's a world where Beal could restock his help his stock just a little bit more, where maybe you move off of him and you just get salaries in return, or you cut him off. I don't get the world where you just piss him off right away and just try to get rid of him. I think that's a bad route.
No, I don't think it's tenable to just send him home for a year. You piss off the players union with that stuff. That's not
Yeah.
I don't really like when teams do that, so I wouldn't try to say that they should do that to him either. I couldn't agree less on the idea that he fits as a point guard. I don't see that whatsoever. I mean, it fooled me. What would this be, the third time we've been fooled? That just is like put a gun to my head. I don't even know what the fool me 3 time is.
The ending of that 2023 season, I think it's 2023, where they were playing the Timberwolves in the first round. He was their point guard. He came out and said he was their point guard.
I don't care what Bradley Beal said.
Okay.
Devin Booker was the primary playmaker of that team.
I think there's a world where Beal could be not the primary playmaker, but the primary distributor of the basketball and bring the ball up the floor and help out with the offense in that regard. I think we need to give if you can't find an actual trade partner for Beal, like just give it a chance is all I'm saying. I know it's not a
of course you have to give it a chance, but you don't have to start him at the 1. I think you bring him off the bench, you play him 20, 25 minutes a game, basically as Booker's backup. Obviously, if he's playing 25 minutes a game, they're going to share the court sometimes. Mm-hmm. And
he just had a terrible attitude.
Let him try to score. Well, he has a terrible attitude no matter what, if we're being 100% honest, because you talk about getting to the basket. He doesn't want to get to the basket anymore, Ben. He bails on drives every time he gets a chance. He doesn't want to put the requisite effort in, probably because he gets hurt when he does that. I'm not insensitive to the fact that I would be skittish too if every time I land wrong, I'm suddenly out for 2 weeks. Like, that has to be frustrating, even if, people have their opinions of him exaggerating some of that. I don't even want to get into it, but I understand that would be in my head too. But you talk about Wizards Beal. I don't think he's been that guy since maybe that season when he won the scoring title. I wasn't charting Washington stuff often enough back then to know what injury might have been the one that made the dominoes fall down. I just don't think physically he is a player that can play any type of role consistently at a high level. I do think that ship has sailed. I think at this point he is a scorer who's pretty efficient, doesn't turn it over a ton, and he's not like a killer defender, which is why I think, not just because it would benefit the Suns, whenever he eventually goes on the open market again, his destiny is to be a mid-level player on a bad team. I'm sorry. I don't think he has to be that, but I have 2 years of watching this guy now to tell you that that's what he seems to be headed toward, whether that's the best thing or not.
Now, listen, I think there's 2 avenues you can go down with this. One, I don't think it's impossible for Beal to be traded because Ben Simmons once got traded for James Harden. You just got to, there might not be a lot of suitors, but you just got to find one sucker. There's an idea out there. I don't like to believe insane Twitter accounts, but it's just a good name. If you told me the Charlotte Hornets wanted Bradley Beal, I'd be like, yeah, it makes sense. They're a bad organization. Who thinks that
the difference we always have to say, Ben Simmons didn't have a no trade clause.
That it is fair. The other avenue is a guy with a big contract who didn't work out for years there, went to a different team. That team made the playoffs this year, looked pretty good. I'm talking about Tobias Harris. So there is the avenue that you could go down that maybe he's Ben Simmons and it never gets figured out, or he's Tobias Harris and he's a volume microwave Malik Monk scorer on a team trying to win a title as the 7th man. Maybe that's what it is. But I still see the explosive athleticism from Beal sometimes. I think oftentimes it's a want to, not a can he. And that's an issue too, man. So if you want to,
why did he not want to for 2 years in the best situation he's ever been in his basketball life?
I don't have a good answer.
Well,
I don't have a good answer.
I don't know if any coach or GM around the NBA has a good answer to that and why they would want to bring that into their building either.
Yeah.
That'll wrap us up. Hit follow or subscribe. We'll be here all week for you. Jordan Ott press conference Tuesday. More KD rumors, I'm sure. Enjoy your Monday. We'll talk to you tomorrow.